All right, welcome to the Milton Planning Board. This is our 17th meeting of the fiscal year. And the first thing we're going to do is introduce ourselves. I'm Alex Whiteside, the chairman.
Ed Duffy, I wish happy spring to everybody. I think it's here.
Finally.
Mike Kelly, member.
Brian Furs, member.
Emily Martin, admin.
Tim Serwinski, assistant town planner.
Emily Ennis, member.
And we have over in the corner Bill Clark, the town planner. Now, we're going to remember our colleague Bill Dolan, who recently died. Bill was on the board for 33 years. He was really the dean of the board. No one has served on the planning board longer than Bill, and he served with great distinction. And he did a lot to get the town to where it is now. The zoning, which is in place, a lot of it was the brainchild of Bill Dolan. It was especially good in things that trying to avoid streets while allowing for development. He was quite brilliant. So we should observe a moment of silence for Bill Dolan. Thanks. We're going to meet tomorrow, 6:30, same place, I believe, right?
Downstairs.
No, we're going to be downstairs in the Blute conference room. And then we'll meet again on April 9th. Citizen speak? Any citizens want to speak on a matter that it is not going to be on the... We're having a public hearing on some zoning, and people wanting to speak on that can speak on that in due course. Citizens who don't want to speak about the zoning in Thayer are encouraged to come and speak briefly. But seeing none, we will pass to a plan for 711 Randolph Avenue. And this, I believe, is the site of a proposed 40B development. And who is going to tell us about this plan?
Yeah, Jim DeSalle from DeSalle Burke and Associates. I guess the big question here is whether it's Zone B or Zone C. I mean, I'm sorry, Zone A or Zone C. That seems to be the issue from the beginning. The zoning map that's online, hanging on the wall in the planning office, or was at the time, and the one we've been using as far back as I can, I know it was published in 2002, clearly shows that this lot is in a Zone C.
Which lot?
The
Lot A
711.
or Lot B?
Lot A is in the Zone C.
Okay.
Lot B is in Zone A.
Okay.
That's not
And
the,
parcel A is also a lot, and that is in the A district.
part of it.
Well, you're going to have to, so
I'm sorry,
there's
part-
another issue there.
Again, it's the same idea. It's going back to 100 feet. The original lot subdivision back in 1950 included 721, 711, all the way down to 699. It included all of these lots here.
669.
669, I'm sorry.
Okay,
And the Zone C was 100 feet back from there.
100 feet back from the street or from
The street line.
Okay. And,
So, and it, which ran roughly where that sewer easement is. So the line shot, all, on the zoning map, it shows it going all the way down to the property that's owned by, it says Jacob and Christian Carlin.
so was Lot A and Lot B initially one lot?
Yes, it is
Okay.
right now.
So that is an indication that someone way back when, thought it was in the A zone, right?
Maybe, yeah.
That's,
I understand what you're saying. Yeah, it's a larger lot. It's a 40,000 square foot lot.
and it has, but it doesn't have enough frontage for an A lot. So that is an indication that someone may have either been wrong or sloppy.
Or it was a C lot which only required 75 feet of frontage.
Well, exactly. And so why do you want to make B into a unbuildable lot?
We're going to add it to parcel A as part of that 40B project.
Why don't you reflect that on this plan? To be combined. Lot B will be combined. That's what's usually done with parcel A, which is in fact a lot.
It says right here in note 4, that's what we're doing.
What?
If you look at note 4, that says exactly what we're doing.
Oh, okay. Parcel A is a lot,
Correct.
so it should be denominated a lot.
It's not, okay, but it's not part of, quote unquote, this division. The only lot being divided,
Well, it is because it's going to be added to.
okay.
I mean, and you have these owners, you have the three owners, and we don't know what they own. Do you know what they own?
Yes.
Well, maybe you could. And it also seems to me you should take out the wetlands, since we're not going to.
Okay.
And what about all these other dotted lines that you have here? You show Meg Lane, Meg Lane. You show Meg Lane.
I indicate the subdivision plan that created Meg Lane that was never acted on.
Right. Any particular reason? Just general information?
It just indicates where it is.
Okay, now Mr. Clark has a few choice words.
Okay.
Does. I'm just going to push Mr. DeSell over a little bit. What we have is a series of zoning plans that go back to 1938, 1994, 2002. And what Jim is talking about is, he's right. Somehow or another, in 2002, our engineering department decided to take and put Meg Lane, or Ashley, I think it's Ashley on here, onto the plan. But in 2002, this isn't the plan that town meeting approved. Town meeting last amended the zoning plan in 1995. So I've been looking for 1995 plans, and we don't have them. The closest thing I came up with was a 1994 plan. But if you take the 1994 plan, you take our parcel data from today, and you use the 1938 plan, these things match up. And in the 1938 plan, they didn't
What things
have
match up?
the zoning lines.
Okay. And the zoning lines are different, you're saying,
In
from what's on
2002,
the
somehow or
current
other,
map?
In 2002, the zoning line slid down the street so that it included 711, 721.
In which zone? It included it in C or included it in A?
Those were in A.
Those were in A until the 2002
plan.
map.
They're
Okay,
in Zone A.
okay.
How did they ever get approved without enough frontage?
They did have frontage. Meg Lane wasn't there.
Oh, so they took
Oh,
the
they
frontage
had-
from Meg,
yeah,
from,
All I
okay.
can think is that that's what happened. I can't find any filing on Meg Lane because it was too long ago.
what about the registry?
I have the Meg Lane subdivision plan if you want that, from 1997.
Yeah, okay.
So there was no road there before 1997.
And who owned it?
It was owned by the O'Toole estate.
And who owned number 711 at that time?
James Harder.
He had
Wow.
130 feet of frontage.
Yep.
Which is what shows here.
So was that 94 Meg Lane taken from 711 or 693?
I don't know.
It was never part of it at this time. This was sold out in the 50s.
Right, but you're showing a hard line along Lot A and a hard line along 693 here. Where's the division between Lot A and 693, or is that all Lot A? See what I mean? There's no border here.
Okay, but again, I can show you the plan that was in 1950. It was a dotted line that was indicated saying that they were going to potentially put a road there in the future.
Okay, but now, where's the legal line between those two
Along the
properties
edge
now?
of, there's a 50-foot strip between 711 and 693, which was the remainder of the O'Toole piece.
Is that curve about 20 feet? I mean, if it came in straight, would that be 20 feet?
Yes,
Okay, so,
but again, it's not a road.
But who owns it?
It was owned by the O'Toole,
Who
No.
owns it now?
the HMDW.
Okay. So it's not owned by the people on either side, it's owned by the people who
People in the back.
own parcel A? Okay.
Yeah, this,
so,
I don't find any recording for 7-Eleven in the zoning board of appeals, so I don't know how
okay,
they
I
got to
want,
130.
it seems to me the way we should do this is the members of the board should go look at the plans. And we should do this on April 9th. What do you think of that, Bill?
I'm fine with that. I'm
All right.
Looking at
What
you
does the
for-
board think of that?
What plans are we looking at?
What?
These plans.
All that
These,
stuff.
These, those, this.
Okay? So we're going to, and we don't have a time constraint, do we?
No, well, you do, but if it's going to be contested, you
What?
potentially do because it's an A and R. They
But has
filed
it
as
been
an
filed with
A&R.
the town clerk?
It was filed with the town.
When?
I want to say November.
The date on this is November 5th on this actual
Yeah, but that
drawing.
came before
So it would have
the
been-
application.
Of course.
But it
but-
still comes back that it's something that is contesting the zoning plans that we have.
Well, since we're over the, over the limit, being a little more over the limit probably is not the worst thing in the world. Let's look at these things and see if we can't figure it out. It really you should get your parcels all denominated as lots and make a little, it would be nice to have a little squiggle there, but I guess that you can't do the squiggle until it's happened, can you?
No, it
But
doesn't.
it is owned by the same people. So you could do a squiggle because as soon as
Indirectly.
we approve it, then
they're different entities, but
you could
same
do it. You
parties.
could do a squiggle.
Yeah, okay.
All right.
Parcel A and Lot B is owned by the same entity, you said?
Not the same entity, but
The same group.
same groups.
Okay. Which
They're controlled.
And they have nothing to do with Lot A?
Yes, they do.
Yes, they do.
They do?
They
Okay.
they own
They
this,
own it.
this, and this.
Presently, Lot A and Lot B are one lot.
Okay.
So
The
just,
plan here is to divide those two.
before we stop, I have one
It's to
question.
take Lot B and connect it up with parcel A for the
Just for the
40B
development.
project.
But if we do that as is currently drawn here, and Lot A is actually in Residence A, it means we're making Lot A non-conforming, correct?
Yes.
That's the problem. Okay, I just wanted to clarify that second half of it.
And we would think it was grandfathered. Okay. So we're going to do this on April 9th. Now, thanks for coming in.
These stick around
Anyway, so.
Are those things all for?
Ms. McKetrick, would you come and be succinct and brief about Schulman Way?
I'm Marion McKetrick. I'm an attorney for Congregation Beth Shalom, and I just came tonight with a question about how to file an application for what we think is a minor modification of their subdivision plan. So I just want to pass this around. It's small, the rest of, I have one large plan to show you what's proposed. I've given you a memo. I'm going to give you another copy tonight because I think it's even a little bit clearer the way I've written it. The gist of this is there are two small changes that are proposed. One is a tiny change in the perimeter of the lot, because Mr. Gordon, who donated the land to the temple, wants to donate another 1,700 square feet in order to square off an edge so that it will follow the stone wall. So on this plan is this little plan, and I'm sorry I don't have a big one for you tonight, but there's a reason. I want to find out what the labels should be. On this little plan, if you go in from Lodge Street, you'll see parcel 29M2. It's a triangular parcel at the end of Schulman Way and just on the edge. That's the parcel that Mr. Gordon wants to convey to the temple. And it changes the lot lines.
Well,
Or it changes something on the
it doesn't
subdivision.
change the lot lines. It simply,
It creates a new
it
parcel.
adds to the amount of land in the, available to the temple.
That's correct. So, do you want me to ask for a modification of the definitive plan to do this, or not? But I guess that's my first
I
question.
would think that if they acquire extra land, they don't have to change the subdivision. They can just acquire it and plant it with whatever they want to plant there.
And record it with the registry of
And
deeds,
record
et
it,
cetera, et
exactly.
cetera.
And
Yeah.
we don't have to change the subdivision for that.
Because I'll probably, I'll either have to file a linear description or the survey plan showing what the parcel is. And so originally, I thought it might be more straightforward to just come in and get it approved by you and then have it be the revised or modified subdivision.
We can always make it part of the subdivision if you really, really want us to. But I don't think we really, really want to do it.
Okay, yeah, that's my question. Do you want me, I
all
thought I
right.
might be required to do
Well,
it that way.
Yeah, I was going to say, the only thing is if you're coming in to us for something else, say the entry drive layout.
And we are.
You could go ahead and include it on there because you're coming in anyway. If that were the only thing, I
Okay.
wouldn't worry about it.
Well, we are coming in for a second request, so you can think about it for a minute while I explain the second request. The second request is one we had discussed last year, and it is a modification of the end of the roadway so that rather than having, this is still within the approved road layout. So the approved road layout on the definitive plan does not change in order to approve this request. Now, these are 3 plans. I'm going to leave them with you so you can look at them. And the reason I'm here tonight is to just make sure we do our application in proper form. This is a plan you do not have yet, but we will be giving to you, which shows the way this lot is actually going to be developed. Because they now have a plan for the building, they have a plan for the parking lots. Now that they have a parking lot and a driveway going out of the parking lot, they want to eliminate the paved turnaround at the end of the road because they don't need it anymore. And the fire department last year told us that they were fine with this design once we had actually developed it. But in order to submit this subdivision plan last year, when we didn't have plans, we had to provide the turnaround. These are plans, these are sheets of the plan that you have approved. This is the roadway detail plan, which is sheet 4, and this would have to be submitted to you as an amendment. This is an amended, is this the roadway detail? No, this is sheet 4. This is the layout for the road, but this shows the details for the roadway design at the end. See how it's turning now and there's no circle here? That requires that we submit an amended part of our plan. All of this plan, all 5 sheets, have been recorded.
Or we could require that you simply don't build out the circle and continue it straight and leave it on the plan and simply say, don't build out the circle.
Whatever is simpler is the way we'd like to
I
do
think
it.
that is simplest.
This plan is still going to be created for the purposes of the temple because, of course, the engineering department has to approve all kinds of details.
But I
do you need it?
understand, but putting it on record at the Registry of Deeds probably isn't something you want to do. And if we simply for the time being, because you have the turnaround in the parking lot, not require that the circle be built out, just have a driveway go through it to the parking lot. We could do that without much fuss, I think. What does the board think?
It's within the original roadway that we approved. You're not
Correct.
going to either side of it.
It's not a redesign of the roadway.
So we can treat it as a de minimis, write a memo to the effect that the board
Yeah.
agrees if we all in fact
I mean,
agree,
the circle
and
would still exist, except it would have flowers on it.
It's less pavement.
Right.
more
Right.
vegetation.
Right.
Yeah,
It's been worked out with the neighbors.
that's a key element.
It might, I think we might be moving the fire hydrant a little bit, and I hate to say it, but that was on your plan. It's same deal, it was on this one, but whatever you
That's
wanted me to
between
do.
the engineering and the fire department.
But
Exactly.
don't put it in the circle.
It's not going to be, it's on the edge, but I think it's been moved over.
Keep it on the edge of the circle, just because the circle will still exist in case something happens to the parking lot.
Okay, okay, I understand that. So if we are able to do this way, I'm not sure exactly how it should be written up for a vote by the planning board, and I want to leave these plans with you anyway, so that you can review them once again to make sure there isn't some problem with this. That is another reason why we'll do this parcel conveyance as a conveyance, and we'll tie it, we'll figure out how to do that. I'll either do it with a linear description, or if I have to record something, I'll record something, but as long as you don't object to the conveyance of that parcel, that tiny little piece of land, when you have this subdivision
We
plan.
can't object.
Okay. All right. And,
At
well,
least I don't think we can object.
and I'm assuming also that just conveying a 1,700 square foot parcel, I mean, you're not creating a lot, it's not a buildable lot, it's not an A
It
and
is being combined,
Right, it is.
so it's just increasing the size of the existing lot,
Okay, so I can, okay.
existing
All right,
conforming
good.
lot.
That's very helpful. If
Thanks
that's-
for coming in.
You're welcome.
All right, now, we have a zoning matter to consider. There is a citizen's petition, which was filed, called Condominium Planned Unit Development. And we are holding a public hearing on it tonight because we're supposed to make a recommendation to town meeting about what we think about it. I might add, and Mr. Clark isn't here, but there also is on the warrant a moratorium having to do with signs.
It's tomorrow.
What?
We're talking about that tomorrow.
We're going, right.
Yeah.
But it does seem to me, and you can think about this for tomorrow, that it does seem to me that that is a zoning change. Just because it would change the deal on signs potentially forever. So I think we're probably going to have a hearing on that down the line sometime.
I thought the hearing on that was tomorrow.
It's just
No,
a-
it hasn't been advertised.
Oh, it wasn't advertised? Okay. Yeah, we should have a hearing
So
on
we'll
that.
have a talk about it tomorrow.
Discussion.
And then make sure we have the hearing one of the two nights in April.
Okay, does anyone want to, is there any proponent here on this citizens article for condominium planned unit development who would like to advocate for its passage at town meeting?
Good evening. Tabor Keeley, and I'm one of the original 10 signatories for on the article. I'd like to advocate for this for a number of reasons. I was was a neighbor to the St. Pius process from last fall, and during that process, all of the neighbors pretty much agreed that this ought to be a template for a plan for the town instead of a spot zone the way it was for St. Pius. And I thought that this was a good example of something that we could do. Whether the verbiage was perfect, I don't know, but it was progress in my book. I think we're in deep trouble in this town, and we've got to get out in front of that and plan. The development community is planning for us. We've got a lot of 40Bs. They seem to be popping up with some regularity, and I don't see any reason why that will stop. As a town, I think if you watch the selectmen's meeting or the warrant committee, you can tell that we're pretty close to broke, and single-family homes are a money loser. These are, as a multifamily or a condominium development, the town has several of them between 88 Wharf and Quistit Brook, the old Lamb Estate, a lot of other examples. And the number of students at the Milton Public Schools in those developments, dramatically less. And I know that Bill Clark's office has done a little study on that, and I don't have the numbers with me, but it is significant versus the standard single-family home. And at $13,000 a student, we just can't afford it. And this is a number of reasons to go forward with this. I understand that there's an amendment for a site-specific zone coming, and I think that might be appropriate at this time because we need to get something passed here versus the consequences of not allowing it through zoning and pushing it for some other, either a 40B or a nonprofit. But I think this really ought to be the kick in the pants. We need to get this thing done. And if it's not on the fall warrant, I think we're all in really big trouble. Thank you.
Okay, does anyone else want to be heard on this?
Proponents for it, against it? Good evening. My name is Eric Shupchelowitz. I live on Ford Ranch Road. I was going to speak mostly about the amendment to the proposed bylaw.
Can't speak to the amendment until the amendment is presented.
Understood.
It gets a little confusing if we speak to two different articles, or two different proposed bylaws simultaneously, so.
Understood. I will echo then the concerns that were raised during the condo committee discussions about the proposed bylaw. While I do agree that condo zoning is a great addition to the town, in the current form, I don't think it's appropriate. St. Pius was in one zone of the town, but I don't think the way that it lays out the framework for condo development is appropriate town-wide. We have different zones, as do most communities, and density is distributed throughout the town to maintain the single-family zones. There's business districts, and I think that's all an important part of planning. So with that, I will wrap up. Again, there was a big discussion on that. I know Alex and Brian were on the condo committee, so more of those issues were discussed. But I will reserve my comments on the site-specific amendment for the appropriate time.
Okay.
Thank you.
Who else wants to be heard on this? Yes, Ms. McKendrick?
May I speak about an amendment now, or would you like to wait?
You can speak about the amendment if you care to. Does anyone else, are there any other proponents of this particular article who want to be heard on it? Okay, I don't see any. Why don't you come up and
Thank you.
There seems to, just before, I'm just watching the audience. Do you have something you want to say?
Well, I'm confused, but I'm sure Alex will explain. So you don't want anybody to speak specifically?
I want anyone to say whatever they want to say about the original article. There is going to be an amendment which I am not going to participate in consideration of because it would affect my property. But I've asked Ms. Innes to do that. So
was going to say, I think it may be cleaner if we deal with the article that's on the warrant now first.
Okay.
Get that conversation dealt with, and then move on to the amendments, so we don't have a back and forth and a
All right.
confusion about which one we're talking about.
Okay. Does anyone want to be heard in opposition to this
Original.
article? The article on the warrant was submitted by the citizens. I have a few comments which I can make on this. The article has no minimum lot size. It makes unbuildable lots buildable. Its purpose is to, interesting purposes, very vague purposes, preservation of areas of scenic beauty, needs to be defined. Beauty's in the eye of the beholder. Historic preservation, once again. Protection of environmental features. What does that mean? A neighborhood's unique character and history. It is very, very vague. They say that you can have density of 4 units an acre and get a bonus. A bonus if you have a variety of things, including significant difficulties of access, would give you a bonus of 0.5 units. And for the life of me, I don't know why significant difficulties in access should give you a bonus in the number of units you can build. Sensitive environmental features, once again, there are many environmental features. The bonus language is just as vague as the original language. In number 3, they switch from condominium planned unit development to townhouse development without giving any explanation whatsoever of why. You go to 4 building setbacks, they talk about adequately buffered from neighboring residential properties. Adequate, needs to mean something. The planning board just can't say this doesn't look adequate to us. It needs to say something. There needs to be specificity in this article. I don't think 1.5 parking spaces, this is number 6, 1.5 parking spaces for a unit in an area that isn't served by public transportation is at all sufficient. I think it should be at least 2. I don't think an addition of 2/10 for guest parking and service parking is adequate. And then finally, let's look at the St. Pius. It was 4 units. This is a Residence A zone. 4 units per acre with a 0.5 bonus if you did certain things. If you go to a Residence A zone, which is twice as big as an A zone, presumably you would have half as many units. So in a double A zone, you'd have a density of 20 with, if there were a bonus, which there is for these incomprehensible reasons, you get to 2.25 maximum density. This is an attempt, this was a draft that was sent to the working group on condominium development and was somehow translated into a warrant article before it had been vetted by the working group. And my suggestion is that it needs to be vetted by the working group, and it would be a good idea to send this along to the planning board with the suggestion that it might be referred to the working group.
You're also on the condominium committee, so I don't know if you have thoughts.
Well,
I've got a few thoughts.
I mean, my original reaction to the bylaw, it actually ends with, I think Mr. White's would make lots of good comments, but I think for me, the lack of a minimum lot size was really, that was a deal killer for me right as I read it. As far as whether the condo committee reflects on this particular bylaw that was put forward or continues to do its own work on a variety of combining this with the St. Pius and looking at a few other versions, potentially this amendment that's coming forward, I have no problem with necessarily recommending it back to study for the planning board, but I'm not sure that I want this particular submission to be the basis of our work going forward. So if it is referred back to the planning board for further study, I wouldn't want our study to be limited to this particular submission.
Which I don't think it would be. I mean, it would be just sent to the planning board, and it would, the planning board would say, here's something you can think about.
Okay.
But it would not certainly bind anyone or the working group.
One of the considerations I had when I read this, I share a number of concerns about it, not least of which is the ability for somebody to assemble parcels together to create a development in order to do this. But one of the considerations is this is an article that's in front of town meeting. It's on the warrant. I'm assuming it's going forward under print with a no recommendation at this time, given where we are in the process. So we'll be presenting our recommendation at town meeting. The question would be, as I read through this, are there changes that we can make to this article within the scope of this article that would tighten up the concerns that I'm sure we all have with it? And I went through and had a look at it, and I agree. I think it should be sent back to the planning board for further study. And I don't want to knock the work of the people who wrote this and brought it forward, because I agree. I think looking at this on a town-wide basis is critical. But certainly the vagueness of the language makes it a difficult bylaw for us to enforce later on and to write a special permit for in order to allow something like this to happen. So I would agree with sending it back to the planning board, and also for the planning board to then have the condo committee look at this along with some of the other suggestions that have been brought up for putting on the October warrant.
So when you're suggesting changes to tighten it up, is that in case it passes, or is that in lieu of sending it back to planning
No,
board?
what I wanted to do is say, okay, is this something that we could say to town meeting, look, if you make these 5 changes, it would tighten it up, it can go forward. But I don't think that's the case. I think the best recommendation, in my view, is to send it back to the planning board for further study and bring something forward in October, along with the other zoning articles that we'll be considering for that. So I don't think it could be tightened up even for, not within the scope. But you would have to go outside of the scope, and of course that's not allowed. So.
All right. Anyone else want to be heard on this?
Do you want a motion?
Yep.
I move that we recommend to the warrant committee and to town meeting that the condominium planned unit development article be sent back to the planning board for further study and recommendation at the October 2015 town meeting.
Second.
All right, any discussion? Now, Ms. McKettrick, I think that I saw your hand up, and It may be the last minute, but come on up and,
I'm not sure whether I should have been up here speaking to you before you took that vote. That's why I
we
had my
haven't
hand up.
taken the vote.
Okay. And I'm not asking you to take a vote
We're in the
on
discussion period.
anything that I'm bringing to you tonight. I just want to explain to you, you know, what's been going on, and you're all aware that you're aware that the working group has been looking at the article that was filed and talking in general about writing condominium zoning, and it's been a very difficult process because there are a lot of different sites and a lot of different issues, and it's difficult to get your head around how to write zoning that will address all of them at once, and it's entirely possible that that's not what even the working group will come up with in the end. Meanwhile, I represent Todd Hamilton and John Fandry. They own 13.13 acres off Hillside Street and Ford Ranch Road. Mr. Fandry inherited the property in 2005 and has been trying to find a way to develop it that works for everybody since then, and has not arrived at a solution. And everybody's the owners are getting impatient. They want to sell the land. It's just a land they inherited. They want to get some money for it. So when the working group was formed, and we passed site-specific zoning in October, my advice was that we should defer to the working group process and see what they came up with, and see if they came up with something perhaps by May. And that hasn't been possible. But I think that both the developer and the owner have respected the process and the creation of the working group. I've been to the meetings. You've been very good to allow me to be there and comment, even though I'm not a member of the committee and I represent a developer. And I've learned a lot from that process. But I'm here now in March, as they are, without any zoning that can be considered at this town meeting, with at least one offer on the table for the property that's from a nonprofit, and with other options being looked at that may or may not be attractive in general to the town. But nothing else, you know, and some discussion is hopefully going to get underway now because we have this zoning article. What I did after the last meeting of the working group was to take a rough draft that had been prepared by some members and had started to be discussed that was not site-specific, and to revise it as a site-specific amendment. And I have to call it an amendment, and it actually may be within the scope of the article that's before town meeting, because it's a site-specific condominium zoning article. It's much narrower than the originally filed article. I don't know whether the moderator will accept it, even as an amendment, and I've asked him, but I don't have an answer yet. So the only way this could be considered, which I think you have a copy, but I'm going to pass this around because I may have made a few more corrections, would be as an amendment. If it turns out it can't be considered as an amendment, then it's going to be the subject of, I hope, continued discussion. Because there needs to be a solution of some sort arrived at for this development site that is satisfactory to the developer and the owner and to the immediate neighborhood and to the town. So I think we need to be thinking about this particular site and perhaps a couple of others that may be coming into play or maybe for sale. But my focus is on this site. And so this is much more specific and much more detailed. It may not be satisfactory in terms of what people want to see as zoning for the site. And it may be that it isn't acceptable to the neighbors to have any condominium proposal here. But what has happened is the neighbors have, 3 neighbors met with a developer last Friday. They called me over the weekend and they asked me to give them this draft. And I gave it to them in electronic format. You know, they can mark it up and do whatever they want. I don't know what's going to happen going forward, but they talked about trying to meet with others in the neighborhood and to get a discussion underway and see if there would be a way to proceed with this whenever it's possible to do so. I've already explained I don't know if it can be considered by this town meeting. If it is considered as within the scope of the article filed, it could be an amendment. And the way that would work is the amendment has to be proposed the planning board really would need to decide that they thought this should be considered as an amendment at town meeting. And they would need to advise the warrant committee that they thought it should be considered, at least be discussed. And the warrant committee then might consider making the amendment its recommendation to town meeting. But there's a lot of buts and ifs in between, and you're just getting this and you're going to have to think about it. So I just wanted to give it to you tonight to tell you that the way it could be considered now would be only as an amendment to the article that was filed. Obviously, it could be a warrant article in October, but I'm dealing with some development options, or I'm looking at them with the developer and the owner. They may not be heavily supported by the town, but they're out there. So if we were able to arrive at agreement and if this were acceptable as an amendment to the article filed, it may be that it should be discussed in May. And of course, the risk to that is that something gets discussed before the town meeting, but it doesn't succeed, it fails, it gets a no vote. Then you've got an article in this form that I guess can't be resubmitted for a period of time, because that's the way zoning works. So there's a risk for that. Here's what's happening in the neighborhood is that this fact that the no decision has been arrived at as to how this property will be developed means that properties around it now have an unknown. And when they try to go out and be marketed or be sold, there are questions asked and they can't be answered. I mean, that's a situation that occurs a lot, you know, if you have vacant land behind you or something like that. But there's been kind of a history here and discussion, and anyone who Googles the site is going to see some of that. So it's making it difficult, I think, for some landowners, or one at least, to sell. And that is one reason to try to look at it sooner rather than later, but that's only one reason. And the proposal, or the resulting zoning, if there is to be zoning, it has to be good zoning that works for this site and that the town can get behind. It's very difficult to pass a zoning article, I realize that. I've seen it many times in town meeting, and at this time, there isn't a great deal of time to put into this. I ask you to take a serious look at it, take it, mark it up, critique it, in any case, because I don't think it's wasted effort, because this whole issue of condominium zoning is going to continue to be before you. Meanwhile, if I do get an indication from the moderator that he could consider an amendment, this as an amendment, then I will certainly send that information to everybody, but it's the moderator's decision, so.
Do you have any idea of when that decision might come forward?
I hope soon. I mean, I've communicated with him, but I just don't know. I've asked the question, I've told him that I needed an answer in order to know whether we should try to work on this now.
Have you considered doing it as a special town meeting within the annual town meeting?
I did, but there just isn't time to do that. The regular warrant went to the printer, and this is all because, you know, it's been difficult to come up with a proposal. The working group felt it just wasn't going to be possible for them to do that in time for May, but they still were trying to discuss what had been submitted and how it could be changed as of 2 or 3 weeks ago, and there's still, you know, nothing came out of that meeting. The warrant went to the printer today. The warrant has to be in the homes 1 week before for regular town meeting and 2 weeks before for special town meeting. Mm-hmm. So it would be extremely difficult to submit this as a separate article, because to be assured that you could get it to a printer, get it printed, and get it out in the mail and in homes 2 weeks ahead of time, because if it doesn't get there 2 weeks ahead of time, then that's a flaw and the article still can't be considered. I feel it's simply not possible. My feeling is that, well, maybe you disagree, but.
Well, I was going to say that you could schedule the special for the second Monday instead of scheduling it for the first Monday, and that would give you an additional week to do it.
Mm-hmm. No, it's a possibility.
And I'm bringing this up because I did go through and mark up the draft that we received, and I am concerned, and would certainly be happy to discuss it at this meeting or tomorrow night, however we want to do that. I am concerned that it is out with the scope. It is more restrictive in parts, but it is also a lot more detailed. For example, you've got design standards in here that aren't in the original at all, and while you could look at that as being more restrictive, I don't know that town meeting would have the time to have considered the additional detail prior to voting on it were it to go in as an amendment. So that's a concern that I bring up. It's one of the reasons I wanted to clear the first article, which we know is going in front of town meeting, and have that before we discuss this, but.
Well, I approached
But
it originally that way, so
yeah.
yeah, okay.
So I would consider seeing if the timeline works for a special town meeting, and then that's something we could additionally consider. And then in the meantime, we can look at it and see if it's something that we would recommend for a special, which we may or may not do.
Talk
is the
about
other
that as a
problem.
separate issue, but to
Yeah.
the extent that this is undecided as to whether or not this will be considered as an amendment, I wonder if we should defer our vote as to how we're going to, what we're going to recommend to warrant on this article, either until we have more clarity on that topic, or if our we can discuss it, but if our recommendation to warrant is that this is outside of the scope, and we wouldn't recommend proceeding.
Well, I think we're fairly clear on what we would vote on the first article,
I
so
agree
that's
with that.
reasonable. I think I can withdraw the motion, we can table that until till this comes back. But I would say, I would assume that the moderator is also checking with town council to make sure it's within the scope.
Yeah, and I mean,
so-
the problem you raise is, there's a legal issue, and there's
Right.
an issue it's within the authority of the moderator. He makes the decision. But the issue you raise is an important one, which is, do people have adequate notice? I mean, regardless of whether it's technically within the scope or isn't.
Right.
So I can also, I did talk to the selectman staff about this, and I basically got the rundown on what, the warrant was going out
Right.
today. So, yes, I can check on the possibility for the time frame that you're talking about, just to be able to send some information back to the planning board, because, the moderator himself may want to hear from the planning board on this issue. This is a difficult decision, and if it's controversial, if the scope decision becomes controversial, that in itself becomes something that is a way of,
Right.
weakening the proposal.
Right.
I don't really want to see that happen. So I'll look into the other possibility. Meanwhile, you'll have a couple of days before I get back with an answer. If you have any time to read it and study it, I don't think that's time wasted on the part of the planning board. The planning board is going to be the board that everyone is going to be looking to see what the next step should be. I have given it to some neighbors. They can undertake to discuss it in whatever way they want. They want to meet with the developer, they can. That's their option. It's here, it's a public document. I gave it to the selectmen last night. Anybody who wants to look at it can. The more feedback and thought provided now, the better we're going to be, no matter what we are able to do in May. That's the way I feel. So I thought it was worth the effort to at least try a redraft. I call it a redrafting, but you're right, it looks new to me. There's that scope issue has to do with whether you have noticed that something of what's going to be done in the zoning change, and the other one is so broad that there is at least a technical argument that anything that narrows it is still within the scope of the article. But I understand what you're saying too, it just looks different. So if I can answer questions or anything, I will. I know you've got a lot to do tonight. I wanted to be able to get this to you, have it be considered as part of the public hearing process in some fashion, and I will try to get you more information about whether it's possible to submit it as an actual article.
I will withdraw my motion then, and I think we should continue it to tomorrow night. But I'm wondering if there are people here who wanted to speak to this amendment. And rather than have you come back tomorrow night, we do have something that was supposed to have started at 7:15, but maybe you can come up.
I will recuse myself from any participation in discussion of this, but it does seem to me that we do have a public hearing scheduled at 7:15, and if we're, so just...
Should we open the public hearing and continue it until after this after this conversation has gone, or just?
I just say if we're going to be discussing this amendment, I will turn the discussion over to you because, as I say, this particular article would likely affect the value of my property. In fact, it may be directly applicable to my property.
In that case. So what I propose that we do is listen to the people who have come here tonight, but reserve our discussion for tomorrow night after after we continue this, because of course we do have a public hearing that's scheduled. Does that sound reasonable? So, ma'am, sir, if you'll come forward.
Thanks again. Eric Chifellos from Ford Ranch Road. I'm an abutter to the parcel in question that this amendment was submitted for. And given the topography of the land, I'm actually downhill to the property. So it's important to me personally that development is done responsibly. I'll also say that I'm here speaking as an individual abutter, not on behalf of a neighborhood group or organization. And I also, again, keeping it quick, I want to briefly cover the history, which most of you, if not all of you on the board already know. The developer had originally sought to build 3 houses on this lot, which was denied by the planning board for various reasons. I was not in the neighborhood until after that happened. I will say I would have supported 3 homes, but I wasn't in the neighborhood then, so I had no involvement. Since that application was denied, again, as you all know, the new cluster zoning bylaw was passed that would allow the developer to build 8 homes on the land. The neighbors have conveyed to the developer that we would support him in that. I do understand that he's seeking to do a more dense development. And as Attorney McKettrick said, we are working with him to try and find a development that we can support that is also financially attractive enough for him to undertake. So last Friday, a few of us met with him regarding the proposed 45-unit plan. We promised to give feedback, which we're working on. He promised to share some concept plans that I understand he's provided the town and maybe some members of the board. So we look forward to reviewing those as well once we get them. But I'm here to express the concern with the amendment as it was delivered to us over the weekend. I'm going to jump through a few high-level concerns. Again, it was a cursory reading, so I want to reserve some comments as I have an opportunity to go through it more. But the first concern is, while it is intended to be site-specific, it does seem broad enough to apply to other sites, including potentially Mr. Whiteside, so both existing sites and sites that could be easily assembled. Second, the proposed development is too dense. We're in a AA zoning district, which has 2-acre zoning. This development is obviously much more dense than that. The main entrance for this development is Ford Ranch Road, which is a dead-end road, has currently 10 homes. So the development would increase the number of the homes off of our street by 550%, more than 5 times the number of homes we have now. Again, this is a small dead-end road with 10 homes. A development of this magnitude would drastically change the character of our neighborhood overnight. Third, the bylaw doesn't distinguish between uplands and wetlands. The ground in our area is very wet. Allowing wetlands to increase density means more units on uplands, which would have a negative effect on the water table. Again, being downhill from the property, that's a big concern for me. Fourth, in the first section of the amendment, reference is made to open space and protective buffers, but the bylaw calls for a minimum of only 30% of the total area to be open land, which is much too low for a development of this type in the zoning district of the town that allows the lowest density. From my research in similar districts in Belmont, Newton, and Brookline, the minimum amount of open space is 50%, 70%, and 80% respectively.
Can you say those towns again, please?
Yep. Belmont is 50%, Newton is 70%, and Brookline is 80%. If you look at the open space requirement in the zoning district with the largest lot minimums. Finally, due to the shape of the subject lot, I believe more attention needs to be given to the setback requirements. I'll leave it at that. I am committed to working with the developer. I personally do believe that a development could be designed for the site that the neighborhood should support and that would be financially attractive to the developer, but this proposal is not it. The zoning that applies to the site should ensure that density is appropriate for the area and that open space is preserved. I do look forward to continuing to work with the developer to try and find a workable balance, and hope he will continue to engage us in a dialogue. But for these reasons, I ask that you not favor the proposed amendment, but that you do all continue to support us working with the developer as we try to find a mutually agreeable solution.
Great. Thank you very much.
Can I ask a question? I know we're not having discussion, but in case he's not
Quick
coming back
question,
tomorrow
yeah.
night, just a quick question. Did you give the developer a date by which you would provide comments?
No, not yet.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ma'am? Yeah.
Good evening, I'm Judy George, and on June 10th will be my 50th anniversary living in Milton. And hopefully, I've raised 4 children, 11 grandchildren, and I love this town. I'm going to get emotional. My husband said, "No, Judy, don't get emotional." I want to grow. I want the town to be healthy. It deserves to be healthy. It's a great town. There's no town like it. But I think there's a way to do it that doesn't punish neighborhoods. There's a way to build and to explore opportunities to protect the tax base of the town, which is, first I had a 40B threat hanging over me that the whole neighborhood got up in arms. So now I am the treasurer of the Scotswoods Defense Fund. But I'm here as a human being. And I really want to support that Mr. Hamilton deserves the right to make money. Everybody deserves the right. I was a retailer. I had 38 stores. I sit on many boards. We all have the right to have a reasonable amount of money, but please don't destroy my neighborhood in doing it. There's a way that I'm sure if Mr. Hamilton was happy at one time with 3 homes, and maybe 8 homes are not enough, there might be some number that we could all live with. My house would be the one that would go by on both sides. And I have deer, and I can't explain to you what it's like to live there. I was somewhat of a bride. I'm going to give my age away. But I want to make sure that the town knows that I'm also for affordable housing, whatever we do. We should never not think that there should be a place for people to come to. So it is not about, I know there's been a lot of talk in the media about our area, our neighborhood. We are socioeconomic. I was born in Everett, raised in Quincy, and saved all our money to move to Milton. So we have a combination of ethnicity and financial strength, but it's a really special place. Hillside Street, the Scotswoods area, and I don't know. I hope I live to be 100, but I really do want to try to keep the neighborhood somewhat, while still, to the gentleman's, we need to raise taxes, and the threat of a church doesn't scare me. That isn't why I'm here, because now, first it was the 40B, and now it's the church. And Marion was very kind to try to bring some. We asked her, I was one of the 3 at the meeting with Mr. Hamilton, to try to see what his vision was. But I would fight pretty hard against a 45 development plus affordable housing. I just think it would destroy the whole area as we know it. So thank you so much for allowing me to speak. I know how valuable your time is. I admire and respect this group for the time you put into it. Thank you.
Thank you for coming. Does anybody else wish to speak on this article? Okay, in that case, we're going to continue it to tomorrow night. What's the time, Tim or Emily? You haven't continued anything?
I think it's for 7 o'clock.
7 o'clock? All right, we're going to continue it to tomorrow at 7. And Alex, welcome back.
Okay. Now we're going to have a public hearing on an application. Let me get the application out. An application for a special permit, and the application says it's by the Oldfield Family LLC, and that's the owner, and that the applicants are Maggie Oldfield and Josh Oldfield, and the company is their nursery. So, in any event, this is a special permit, a request for a special permit to conduct a landscaping business at premises on Hillside Street and forestry. And I guess there is one item that we should deal with. I've got a letter from Philip Johanning, who expressed dismay at what he considered to be rude treatment by me at our recent hearing on February 12th, when I opened the floor to questions to the building commissioner. And it had appeared to me that Mr. Johanning was getting into wanted to get into a discussion with the building commissioner about the Dover Amendment, and I ruled that he was out of order. I'm sorry that he feels that I treated him badly. I was trying to conduct the meeting in a manner that was efficient and expeditious. And, but as I say, I'm sorry if he feels that he was badly treated, because we don't like people to feel that way. We want them to feel like they've been fairly treated and respectfully treated. So, why don't we hear from the applicant? And let's, as you recall, when the solar panels fell off the town hall roof and the town hall was closed, the town administrator said all meetings tonight are canceled. And when the continued public hearing on the Thayer application was canceled, that meant that we had to start up the hearing from scratch. And that's what we're doing. We have an application that was filed several